Hey friends, it's Len here at 1A Auto. Today we're going to be doing a lower ball joint on a 2013 Subaru Outback. It's going to be a fairly easy job. I want to be the guy that shows you how to do it. If you need this or any other part, you can always check us out down at 1aauto.com. Alright friends, so one of the first things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make sure that we loosen up all 5 of these lug nuts. We don't want them very loose, we just want them to be broken free so we can go ahead and take them off once we get the vehicle up. The reason for doing it while the vehicle is semi-supported on the ground, but still most of the weight is off of the tire but still touching, is just so when I'm going to loosen this with my 19mm socket and I go to the left, I'm not going to be spinning the wheel in the air, right? We're just going to get them loose. Like I said, you don't want to take them all the way out. You don't want them super loose because if the wheel can, move around, you might damage your aluminum wheel. You might damage your studs that are underneath there. You might basically just cause damage that you don't want to cause. All right, so we're going to do this. We're going to do that to all the lug nuts that we're going to be taking the wheels off of, and we'll move along. So now we're going to raise and support the vehicle. We're using a 2-post lift. You can use something like a jack and some jack stands. All right, get the majority of these lug nuts off. I'm holding the wheel so it doesn't fall off. I'm turning my 19mm lug nut to the left. There it is in there. Grab my wheel, lower it to the ground, and I'll put it out of the way. So one of the first things that I like to try to do is make sure that I can get this jam nut out right here. Basically this goes through the knuckle, through the slot in the ball joint, and then it comes through the other side, which is threaded, and it pinches it together, squeezes it around the ball joint where it's pressed into the knuckle. What's pretty common on these Subarus, and pretty much anything with this type of ball joint in general, is that the bolt will get frozen inside the opposite side with the threads, and it'll break. So what I did is I heated up the backside there. I just got it a little warm. I didn't get it glowing red or anything because it's just cast. I heated it a little bit. I put a little bit of spray. I got it prepped and everything. So now what I can do is I can take my 14mm, put it on this head right here. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise and it should break free. Yeah, nice. Okay, so I know that's coming off. Perfect. I'm just going to leave it in like that. My next step is I'm going to remove a cotter pin that's right here, and then I'm going to take this nut off, get it down all the way as far as I can. Okay, I'm going to try to break this free, the lower control arm from the ball joint. Once I do, I'll put a little bit of spray in there, and then I'm going to put the nut back on and tighten it up. Not super tight, just to pretty much bottom it out, and you'll see why in a second. All right, so I'm going to grab my cutters. I'm going to see about grabbing that and pulling it out, and we'll move along. So I've got my cutters. You can use pliers or whatever you want to use, but essentially I want to grab the part of the cotter pin that's peened over. I'm going to try to straighten it out, and then I'm going to grab this side and try to remove it. So I'll grab it, just try to straighten those out. I'll grab this one, try to straighten them. There we go, feels pretty good. Now I'm going to try to grab this side and try to remove it. All right, so it didn't remove, that's okay. Just trim it off. I'll try grabbing from this side. If it doesn't want to come out this side either, well, too bad for the cotter pin. Okay, it doesn't. Here we are. Cutters did their job. Now I'm going to grab my socket. I'm just going to hammer it onto there real quick, and then I'm going to remove it, turning to the left. Once it's all the way down and out, we'll break this free, the ball joint from the control arm, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. So grab my socket. So I grabbed a 19mm socket. It's not going to want to fit very easily because we still have that cotter pin sticking in there. I'm not really too worried about it because I got my hammer, I've got my 19, and I'm just going to go like this with my safety glasses on, of course. Drive it on there, okay? It's on there pretty good so I can let go. Normally it might fall down, but I'm not worried about it. Grab my long ratchet. If you have an air tool, it might be helpful. We're going to turn it to the left. There we go. I'm going to remove this nut fully. There we are. I'll put it aside. We're not going to be reusing it more than likely once we get past this next step. But for now, we'll look at our threads. What I'll actually do is I'll start it back on here. Okay, still goes on pretty good. So I'm going to set it aside. Now I'm going to work on trying to break this free from the ball joint. Okay, I'll put a little bit of penetrant in there, a little bit up here, see if we can get it broken free. I'll spray some more up inside this upper ball joint area. More the merrier when it comes to that, because you're going to see why. It's going to be a nightmare. Perfect. Now to separate this, if you have access to a pickle fork, something like this, put it in between here, and then just whack it with a hammer until it breaks free. I'm going to try that first, see if it works. It should, that's what it's made for. So I'll grab it. So here we go. I've got my pickle fork, I've got my hammer, my safety glasses, of course. I'm going to put this pickle fork in between where the knuckle and the lower control arm meet. I'm going to try to wedge it in there a little bit, and then I'm going to tap it in with my hammer, get it started. I almost thought that it broke free already. I was going to be super excited. Okay, so now it's in. It's nice and wedged. Safety glasses, hand protection. I think I felt something. Very nice. Okay, I'm going to leave my pickle fork in there for now. I'm going to grab a little bit of copper never sees. This is going to be important. I'm just going to spray it inside there. Go like this. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my nut that I took off. I'm going to put it back in, snug this right up. I want this to be able to come back apart nice and easy for me next time, so I don't have to worry about it. The importance of doing this first, and people are going to be like, why did you take it off just to put it back on? The importance of doing this first is because once I have it out of the knuckle, it's going to be really hard to get the ball joint out of this lower control arm. Think about that. So I'm going to grab my ball joint nut, put it back on there, and we'll move on to the next step, which would be removing this right here, and then driving this control arm down to pull our ball joint out of the knuckle. So we've got our ball joint nut. Like I said, I'm going to put it on there. Now I'm going to be turning to the right because I want to tighten it. Oh, I'm going to turn the ratchet to the left for some reason. Okay, whatever. Using my 19 millimeter. Okay. If it seems like it's just spinning, well, I would go with that's okay. We could try to pry it all together and make it so it stops spinning, but let's not worry too much about that. Let's go ahead and remove this right here with a 14 millimeter. Drive it out. We'll take it out, make sure it looks like it's still good. The ball joint that you're going to get from us, Quality 1A Auto Part, will come with a new one, so I would definitely recommend using the new one. But here we go. Grab my tool. All right, I got my 14 millimeter. We already had this thing loosened up. Just get it right out of here. There it is. Basically what happens is the ball joint has a little groove, and this is just going to kind of rub inside, and it's going to go into the groove and lock it in. And it also grabs on the other side of the knuckle and pinches the knuckle so the hole squeezes up against the ball joint. It's called a pinch bolt. So we've got that out. So that means it's going to be relieving pressure from the squeezing around the ball joint. I'll show you what I mean. We've got our new ball joint. The knuckle just comes around here like this, and then that pinch bolt comes through right here and it squeezes, makes it a nice firm grip, right? We took out that pinch bolt. The knuckle's gonna go, relax a little bit. Not that much. I mean, I'm being unrealistic about how much, but okay. So it relaxes a little bit, right? But the ball joint's still stuck in there. The top of the knuckle is covered. So how are we gonna get that ball joint out, right? Well, we've got the lower control arm sitting right here. It's gonna be nice and tight. Now if I go ahead and I whack on that lower control arm, bonk, 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 it's gonna pull it right out of that knuckle, okay? That's what we're gonna try to do. Let's see if we can make it happen. Okay, everyone, I grabbed my pry bar. It's got the hammer edge on there, so I'm not just hitting on plastic. I don't have to worry about it shattering, poking my eye out, even though I am wearing my safety glasses, as always. I'm gonna go inside the little groove in the knuckle. Try to stick it right in there, all right? You could try to pry on it a little bit, see if you can spread it. If it doesn't want to spread, you could maybe use a hammer. bonk it in there. You don't have to necessarily use a pry bar if you have a punch or something. Basically what I'm trying to do though, put something inside the little slot that's there, try to spread the two ears a little bit further apart. Once I feel like I got them spread apart fairly decently, I'm gonna blast it again with some more of the penetrant. Okay, so hopefully that'll soak in there and hopefully make our life nice and easy. Come in here. There we are. Okay, let's get some spray in there. That looks pretty good. We can let it sit for a second, let it do its job. Once it's at that point and we feel like it's soaked in pretty good, it might have eaten away some of that rust that's holding it all together, we'll go ahead and work at trying to separate these two. And basically I'm going to try to go with something, either with something in between the lower control arm and the knuckle, see if I can use the long pry bar, try to separate it to draw the ball joint out of the knuckle, or we might have to use something else like maybe a long punch. Hit right here from up high, bonk, 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 try to drive this lower control arm down, and hopefully that'll work at separating it, one of the two. Okay friends, I'm going with my brass punch. I've got my safety glasses on. I've got my big fabulous hammer. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna rest it right up against the lower control arm, holding it up against the knuckle just for support generally. I'm just gonna try to drive it down. We wanna see if the ball joint's separating from the knuckle. It looks like it actually might have a little bit. Oh, let me throw my hat. Here we go. Let's try it again. If you need to, you can try to heat up that knuckle a little bit with whatever you might happen to have. Take a look at it. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Come on everybody, let's do it. Get mad about it. See, that's it. We're not paying any more taxes. That feels great. I'm so excited. Yeah. All right, cool. We're cruising now. So now we've got that separated pretty good, right? So what we can do now, so we'll go ahead and we'll remove this 19 millimeter again. We'll try to lift our knuckle up and out of here, and then we'll continue trying to get that lower ball joint out, okay? So here we go. I've got my 19 millimeter socket. I'm gonna remove this nut. First, I'm gonna get this little pry bar out of the way. We don't need that at this particular moment. Turn this to the left. Should come right off. Very nice. I've got a long handle pry bar. I'm gonna try to stick it up against the top of the lower control arm and up against the subframe right here. I'm making sure that there's no ABS wires or cables of any sort in my way. Nothing I can hit up against. I'm gonna try to pry down on the lower control arm and see if I can get either the upper part of the ball joint to separate from the knuckle, or the lower part of the ball joint to separate from the control arm. We'll gauge that and we'll see what we're gonna do. There we are. So all I did is I just kind of swung my whole knee out of the way here. Perfect. So now we can use a hammer. We'll bonk this right up and out. We'll clean up inside here and we'll move along. So here we go. I got my hammer. Nice. That broke free pretty easy. Now we've got our lower ball joint out. We can compare it to our new one, make sure we're working with the right part, and we'll go ahead and install it. Hey friends, it's Len here with a quick product review. We've got our old ball joint from a 2013 Subaru Outback. We've got our new quality 1A auto part, okay? I wanted to show you something. Let's see, I don't have any screwdriver to show you, so I'll use a nice clean bolt. This right here is the groove, okay? And that's where your pinch bolt's supposed to sit into. So you go through one side of the knuckle, and then it goes through this groove, and then through the other side, and it screws in nice and tight, and it pinches your knuckle up against this. What happens a lot of times is your pinch bolt will start to rot out. This is the part where it's screwed into the knuckle. This is the part where you're unscrewing, and this is all inside the knuckle area, right? And it just sits in here, sits inside this groove. After a while of moisture sitting in there, just rots away, rots away, rots away. you get issues something like this, okay? What happens then is this part of your threads is screwed in nice and tight to your knuckle. This is jammed in like it's supposed to be. This rots away. You go to loosen up this bolt, it's gonna snap at its weakest point, which is right here. Now you're gonna have all these threads stuck inside your knuckle. So it's very important that when you're taking it apart, you work on it and you take your time to make sure you get these threads to break free without actually breaking your bolt. One of the wonderful things about your quality 1A Auto part is it comes with a brand new bolt. Now you don't have to worry about this thing. Throw it right in the recycling bin so it can go back to getting made into whatever it's going to be made into, maybe another Subaru, who knows. And we're going to replace our quality ball joint with our quality jam bolt, okay? So as you can tell, they're both the same. I mean, one's in a little bit better condition than the other. You can decide on which one you like better. I would go with the new quality part right here. It's got the same height. See if I can get it wiggled there. Looks good. Even comes with a new nut. And so if you need this or any other quality part, you can always check us out at 1aauto.com. So here we go. Before we go ahead and install our new ball joint, we're going to make sure that the hole is nice and clean. It could be built up with a lot of rust and rot and all sorts of stuff that might have accumulated in there. So we'll just take our small screwdriver, shake it around. If you have something like a wire brush, you can try to get it in there. Just try to clean out the majority of what you can. The cleaner you get it, the better, because you want to make sure that that new ball joint sits in there nice and flush. It's not getting stuck on a big piece of rust that's in there or anything. There we go. If I wanted to, I'm going to wear my safety glasses, of course. I'm just going to spray a little bit of parts cleaner in there. Got my gloves on, obviously. Should specify that. Take a look. Looks pretty clean. We'll let it dry out. Then we're going to grab our lower ball joint. We're going to put it into the lower control arm first, and then we'll float our knee assembly or knuckle up over it, and we'll try to drive it in. Something I like to do is put a little bit of copper never seize up in there, in case I ever have to do this ball joint again, maybe in another 100,000 miles. Here we are. We've got our new ball joint. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and put it right inside the lower control arm, just like that. It's the way it's going to want to sit, right? We can tighten it down if we want. That's probably what I'll do, is I'll tighten it down so it won't move around too much on me. And then I'm going to grab my pry bar. I'm going to try to lower this control arm down, pull the knee assembly over, and then once I get it lined up, I'll go ahead and give this a bonk and try to lift it up in, okay? So we'll grab our new nut. We'll put it onto our lower ball joint. The new ball joint nut's an 18 millimeter, so it's a little smaller than the original. It's okay. Doesn't really matter what size it is, right? Just as long as it holds the ball joint in. I'm going to torque this down, so I'm just going to snug it up, bottom it out. There it is. Good enough. I've got my long pry bar again. I'll try to pull it down. Just try to float it. Okay, you can see it's at an angle, right? We definitely don't want it going in at an angle. So I'm going to go like this. Just going to go down. I'm going to try to keep pushing on the knuckle, see if I can get that to straighten out real quick. Get it as straight as possible. There we are. Slid in pretty good. Now I'm just going to bonk on here. If you have a rubber mallet, you can use that or use your hammer, whatever you feel comfortable with. Double check, make sure it's bottomed out completely. Looks pretty great. Now we'll grab our new pinch bolt. We're going to use a little bit of thread locker if you want. Some people say yay, some people say nay. You could also use, well, use whatever you want. I'm not going to specify what to use or what not to use. You do you, boo-boo. We're going to put the bolt in, we'll torque it down to the specified torque, and we're cruising along. We've got our new quality 1A Auto part here, the pinch bolt. Came with the ball joint. Gotta love them for that. Just going to start it in by hand here. Once I feel the thread start to grab, I'll go ahead and tighten it down. Once I bottom it out, I'm going to stop. I'm going to grab my torque specs, my torque wrench, and we'll torque it right in. So let's get this torqued up. We're gonna go 37 foot-pounds on this right here. This is the pinch bolt that goes through the ball joint to the knuckle. 37 foot-pounds using our 16 millimeter socket. Here we go. Pretty good. Next, what we're gonna do, we're gonna torque this down right here. So I'll just grab the torque spec for that. Once we torque it, we'll just have to make sure that the holes are lined up with the hole that goes through the ball joint spindle. If it's not, you're gonna wanna just tighten it a little bit more. You don't wanna loosen it more, you wanna tighten it. Bring it to the next slot, okay? So I'll grab that real quick and we'll go from there. So now we're gonna tighten this up with our 18 millimeter socket. We're gonna tighten it to 29 foot-pounds. Like I said, once we get it to 29, we're gonna wanna make sure we have the slot lined up with the hole for our cotter pin. So as you can tell, it looks like it just barely missed the slot there. So I'm gonna get this off my torque wrench. I'm gonna grab a regular ratchet, and I'm just gonna tighten it down to the point where it meets up with the next hole. Tightening, I'm not gonna loosen it to the next hole, I'm gonna tighten it. Just like a little bit more. We're getting pretty close now. All right, let's grab our cotter pin, we'll put it through, peen it over, we'll cruise along. Okay, we've got our cotter pin. We put it through the slot and through the hole, goes right through. Seat it all the way. I'm gonna grab the other side of these and I'm just gonna peen them down. Some people like to go one over here, one over there. You can do whatever you want. Essentially, all it has to do is just not come out, okay? Make it look however you want it to look. And there we are. So now we can go ahead, we'll get our wheel back on here, okay? We'll make sure that we clean up our rotor because we touched it with greasy hands. Clean up our brakes, get the wheel back on here, we'll torque it up. We're gonna double check to make sure our front end's nice and snug, make sure that there isn't any movement in our new ball joint, which seems like it would be impossible, but you never know. So you always double check your work, and then like I said, it's always good habit to get an alignment after anytime you do front end work. So keep that in mind. I'm gonna grab my wheel, I'm gonna roll it up my leg and lift it with my abs. I'm not gonna come from the front and try to lift with my back, potentially hurt myself. I'm gonna try to stay healthy as long as I can. I wanna live a long, long time. Hold the wheel, start my lug nut. You can bottom it right out if you want, as close as you can so the wheel can't move around too much. All right, grab the rest of them. Throw one on the floor. We'll just get them all started on, then we'll bottom them out. Bottom them out. I'll go grab my other lug nut. We'll bottom them out, and then we'll torque them down. Okay, got them all bottomed out. Now we're gonna bring it down so the wheel's just barely touching the ground. We don't want all the force of the vehicle on it. And then we're gonna torque these down to 88 foot-pounds. So here we go. We've got our torque wrench, 19 millimeter. We're going to 88. The actual torque spec is 88.5. This particular torque wrench doesn't do 0.5, at least as far as I know. Don't mind that. There we go. So I did a star pattern. We've got them all torqued down. We're good to go. Great job.
Thanks for watching. Visit 1aauto.com, your place for DIY auto repairs, for great parts, great service, and more content.